everybody. This is the Divorce Couch. The next episode will be slightly different. We have decided to talk about our personal stories in order for it to make it even more relatable, because we've each come across our own personal challenges and we would like to address it. So we will begin with our dear friend and colleague Claire, who's talking about her challenges within the church setting and what that meant for her going through her breakup. Hi, Claire.
Hi. Hi, everyone. So we're just going to sort of unpack my story a little bit today. So I'm from Galway, which is the south of Ireland. And it's interesting because the south of Ireland is generally a Roman Catholic known area. And I'm from a Church of Ireland background. So when I went to school, I was the only non-Roman Catholic out of 600 in my secondary school. So I was the complete novelty. Everybody wanted to me in my class to know, what did you believe and all the rest of it. So it was an interesting perspective. And I went to boarding school for a while and I trained as a nurse in Dublin. So my brother is a minister and I went up to the training college one day and they were doing a game of croquet. And I knew quite a few of the guys that were in the training college. And I actually met someone and we did a competition with the croquet and I beat Peter, who turned out to be my husband, in the croquet final with the principal. And that's kind of how we met. And so then it took a while before we were dating. He'd moved and different things. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, he's going to be a minister. And that means I'm going to be a minister's wife. And that was okay. But actually the bigger thing for me was my kids are going to be the kids of a minister. And I was thinking, and I unpacked a lot of this before we got married or before we got engaged, because I thought this is a big deal. So anyway, I worked through all of that and we got married. And then we ended up doing a lot of IVF stuff because we both wanted kids. And so we've had a bit of a difficult journey emotionally with different things. And we've been through a lot. And we moved around. So we live in the north of Ireland now. We moved around like you do in the ministry. And over time, there were lots of different cracks started to appearing in different things. And so I am a nurse, so I would do my job. And then I would be Peter's wife in the parish. And then I would be Peter's wife in the house, helping him to sort out different things. So I suppose the role of a minister's wife became quite a dominant thing. But I never wanted to give up work because I always wanted to have my identity as a nurse and as Claire. And I didn't want to just be the minister's wife because there's lots of different expectations that come with that. So in the middle of all of that, I have my own personal faith and it was sort of growing and chopping and changing as time went on. And as I hit bumps in the road, it just became a little bit more, oh, right, okay, how are we doing this? And sometimes I found that it was a little bit like, okay, so there's what's expected and it's not aligning up with what my reality is. And I noticed this sort of a gap growing. And one of the things was I just found I wasn't really overly fulfilled is probably the best word. But when I say that, it's not because of my role, it's because of who I was. So we had our boys and it wasn't through IVF. And I loved being a mum. Again, didn't want to give up my job. So I stayed part-time. But in my marriage, I find that there were more and more times that I wasn't talking about a lot of the stuff that I was feeling. And I was thinking, what is that? Why is that going on? And, I suppose the journey that goes with that then is, what do I do with that? Am I okay with it? Do I want to do something with it? So I started to see a counsellor because I thought, well, I don't really know what's wrong, but I know that there's something. And I think one of the world is grey and it doesn't have colour. And I didn't know how to put colour back into my world. So it's like, and I was kind of stuck. And on the outside, my world was good. We had the boys and we lived in a really lovely area. I had a good job and I had good friends in my job, but there was just missing something. And so that feeling of missing something grew. And then when I looked at all of that, and then I looked at the sort of the layer of faith in the middle of it, and, well, what does God say about this? And what does God say about marriage and other people's expectations? And I was the minister's wife and all of those things started to sort of become real issues. And then I used to think, well, is it okay for me to maybe step out And I mean, I thought about that a lot as I tried to sort of impact and fix things. I knew that there was breakdowns, but I didn't know exactly what they were. I didn't quite know exactly how to fix them. And so, you know, I spoke to my ex-husband and sort of said, look, this isn't really working for me. So can we look at this? And I said, if we can't do something, then maybe this isn't going to stay together. So I kind of feel, okay, so I put it out there in the only way that I knew how. And I look back now and I think, you know, I wonder if I had done this and I wonder if I had done this. But actually, I kind of did the best I could in the life that I was living. So what I ended up with was this disparity of, you know, I don't really feel happy. And then I thought, well, happy is a bit of a trivial word. And then I would find that I would go for walks. My reset is going for walks on a beach. So God and I would go off for walks on a beach. And I would be going, okay, Lord, this isn't like, what's going on? You know, I have so much. And is it that I'm ungrateful? Or is it that there's something different? Or what can I do to improve? And over time, I know that it takes two people to want to make something work. And maybe two people look at things differently and maybe they want something different. I think now I would say that maybe our expectations were in different levels. And I didn't have those words back then. But there was this growing sense of it just wasn't working, because what I felt was I wasn't being seen or heard. But I think now I would say I didn't know how to be seen and heard. And so when I got to the point that, you know, we talked about maybe this wasn't working for me and we did marriage counseling and different things. And then it improved and then it kind of disimproved. And then I started to think, okay, this really isn't working. And I went back then and thought, okay, Lord, what does this look like? And how do I do this? Because there's a parish of people. There's what I believe about marriage. And yet I had this really strong sense that God had a best for me and I wasn't living it, because I didn't feel alive and I didn't know how to find it. And I had moments of feeling alive when I did things that really lit me up. And some of those were things like joining the praise group in the church and music and different sorts of stuff. So I had these moments and I thought, okay, so those are different to my everyday and they felt good different. And then I started to notice a bigger disparity between those two. So when I got to a point that I was able to realize that I was the only person living behind my front door, and that actually if I wasn't happy, feeling like I could be the real me and express me, I had to do something about that. And my journey to do something about that led me to the point where I thought, this is broken. And somehow we have got to be broke. We've got to a broken state. And do I stay in a broken state or do I step out into something very different? And I was very conscious there was a church of people that would be impacted by my decision. And I had a lot of people in my world that had a faith. And so there was a little bit of what's their story and how does it match up with mine and what's their understanding of God and marriage and all of those things. And, you know, it's very real to me that other people's concepts of things can massively impact decision making. And I am very grateful that I got to a point where I was able to make my own decision based on what was best for me as I felt. Because to be honest with you, nobody actually was living the world I was in. And so now I see that it took a lot for me to get to that point. And a lot of my friends would say to me, gosh, you were so brave, you did whatever. And I never saw that. I just saw that if I wanted to have a sense of possibilities in a different way, then I needed to make a different decision. So my decision to step out of my marriage was very much based on, okay, God, I believe there's something better. And I believe that if it's better for me, it will be better for the children to experience me if I'm better, and actually better for my ex-husband because we weren't working. And if it's not working for one person, it's not working for both. And it's definitely not working for the children. And it's interesting because a lot of people say, you know, oh, well, what about the kids? It never entered my head to stay for the children's sake. That wasn't something that I felt I needed to do, even as a person who believes in family and values and all of those things. Because I think what I sensed was, you know, if God loves me and wants me to be whole, I didn't feel whole. And staying there wasn't going to get me to feel whole. I needed to do something that allowed me space to change or to grow or to heal or to whatever it happened to be. So when I stepped out, I then had what is everybody going to say, and what are they going to think of me, and all of those things. So it was based on what will they think of me by way of, Claire? What will they think of me by way of a minister's wife having done this? And I didn't tell people my story because they didn't need to know, but I knew that being a minister's wife in a small town, it would get out very quickly. So a lot of the stuff that I had to deal with was the stuff in my head, and my, I suppose, fear around what people would say. But I made my decision based on something that was pulling me forward. So I didn't step out of my marriage because my marriage was broken. I stepped out of my marriage because I knew there was something that would give me a better version of me. The outworking of that happened to be that I didn't stay in a marriage. And I'm very clear that for me, the decision was made to put me first in a way that felt selfish, but actually was the only way that I knew that I could go forward, because I wasn't working where I was. So the outworking, for lots of reasons and lots of things. And of course, you can all spend our lives going, what if I'd tried this and what if I'd done that? And we all have that. And I've had to learn that actually I wasn't in a place where I could have tried X, Y, or Z because I didn't know about it and I didn't know how to know about it. And it's taken me a long time to get to a point now where I feel, I feel whole. I feel like there is color in my world. I feel like the people in my world are getting the best version of me because I'm learning how to show up. I now am able to have a voice. I'm able to say when things aren't working. I'm able to find the help that I need. And I think, being a minister's wife and a nurse, I'm very good at helping people fix things. I just didn't know how to do that for me. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a bit of my story, and that layer of guilt and shame that in a faith, whether it's my faith, which it was, or whether it's the faith that other people like my parents or expectations from family or friends or other people within the church, I had to kind of figure that out. And it was only when I made a decision to put me first that I was able to figure out how to manage those things so that they didn't become my guiding force. They became something that I had to navigate, but they didn't become my directional ability. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Can I ask you something, Claire? When you did step out of your marriage, how did people react to you?
Good question.
Yeah, that is a good question. I would say with an awful lot of a more positive impact than I had probably expected. I think my fear level around what will people think and will it rock people's worlds and all sorts of stuff was not my reality when I did step out. Yeah. And, I suppose because of our circumstances and I stayed in the town, I didn't want people to feel compromised. So I chose not to contact people because I didn't want them to be in a position that they didn't quite know what to do. Because as we have all discovered, when you step out of a marriage, it impacts people's worlds, and very often people become uncomfortable for reasons that maybe they don't actually understand. So anyone who contacted me, I contacted them straight back. And anyone who didn't, I chose not to believe that it was for any other reason than of all sorts of things. But I suppose the reality is that the people that know me know that the decisions I make them with a lot of thought and a lot of careful consideration. And there was no sense of what have you done by anybody. And for me, I have never second guessed my decision. When I made my decision, I made it to know that I would move forward and I wouldn't look back and think, did I make the right one or not? It's like, at some point, if we ever got to a point where maybe it would work again, well, we would work as a better working. So I kind of always thought this is the right decision at the right time. And it's very, I would say, freeing for me to know that I didn't second guess it, no matter how hard the bumps in the road got, of which there were many. That was something that was solid under my feet. And I think that's the benefit of taking the time to get to that point, so that I knew it was the right, in my core, every cell of my body knew that this was the right thing for me. And of course, there's impact to everybody else, but I had to not worry about that. I had to just go, this is the right thing for me. And I'm not used to doing that because I'm very good at keeping the peace and managing and organizing. And so that's my role in family and all sorts of stuff. So this was a very big thing for me, and a very big thing for anybody in my world to see me do, because they weren't used to it.
So do you think then the sort of prior to you stepping away, a lot of the time you would actually spent thinking about other people and how they were going to see things, as opposed to, and that was almost more of a priority than your own feelings for a while, until you got to a stage where actually Claire had to come to the fore and what you wanted had to come first?
Yeah, I think so. When I look back now, I spent a lot of time thinking about that, as you say, but also the word should, and should is always associated with guilt. And for me, I had a lot of the word should in my world. I should stay, and I should be true to my marriage vows. And I was married in the eyes of God in the church. And that word should was a big sticking point. And that's related to other people's opinions and stories. And that's not related to me. That's related to that. But I was able to find a way to get to a point where the drive within me to move forward for me was able to override all of that, which had been going on for quite a long time, to get me to a point where I felt I can make a decision based on me, and I will deal with whatever needs to happen, but I'm making it based on me. And it did feel really selfish. It did feel very uncomfortable. But I now know that if you don't feel uncomfortable, you don't grow.
Yeah.
And that's what I know to be true.
Yeah, if we if we go back to the setting that it's a challenge of separation or a breakup within the church environment, and the fear that maybe accompanied you at the beginning, was it as bad as you had imagined, or would you say no, it was a lot less than I had originally imagined? The feedback from church and the responses and reactions.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that I would say the outworking of people's conversations with me in real terms was less. I think that there was an element of something that a lot of people maybe didn't understand my decision and maybe won't. But I think for me, it's the thing of, it's okay for me to be here, and it's okay for them to be there. And it didn't impact me or make me feel like, what have I done? And sometimes, it's in what people don't say that we pick up what's going on, because you feel it, and there was quite a lot of I feel it going on, I think. And I just had to realize, and again, bring myself back to, I'm the only person living my world. And if there's something else out there that has a sense of possibility and aliveness, then I want to go for that. And I don't want to be here. And that's what kept pulling me forward. And I wonder if I didn't have that sense of pull for aliveness and possibilities, would I have been more caught up in what I felt when people didn't say stuff? Because you can feel what people don't say. That's the thing, So, and yet I don't need to justify myself or defend myself or explain myself. I just need to be able to be me. And one of the things that God really impressed on me in church after I had left Peter, I was I went to a different church, and in the middle of worship, and I love music. Music lights up my soul. And that's one of the ways that I find that God communicates with me, would be in worship. And I just have this sense of different things. And I clearly remember one of the things being in the middle of worship one time when I just sensed God saying, you just have to stand. I will do the everything. And the only thing you have to do right now is just stand. And I find that, I'll never forget that, because it allowed me the ability to go through the next phase and saved all my energy. And it's like there's somebody else around me that's helping me get through this. I'm not on my own. And that's my understanding of faith, is I'm not on my own, and I'm doing this because I have this sense of the world is not about me. So that word at that time, to just stand and let whatever was going on happen without me having to be involved in it, was really powerful and really real for me.
You know what's really beautiful about your story that you just, I mean, this, because I also obviously come from, understand that religious sort of undertone that comes with our decisions, is that it's almost as if you chose to use your faith as a strength that was going to help you move forward, rather than what can sometimes happen is when religion is sort of, you know, our beliefs around religion and what the religion is saying without actually, I think sometimes we can take things out of context, and then that allows us to make excuses to stay somewhere where we don't want to be. And it's almost as if what you chose to do was use your faith as a strength that was going to become your driver for whatever it is that you needed to do at that point in time.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that without a shadow of a doubt, the evidence pathway that I have when I look back was that God was ahead of me on every step. He answered things for me that I didn't know I need answered until I got the solution. So I would get the solution and then suddenly realize I had a need for it, even though I wasn't aware of it. My faith definitely grew and strengthened. And I think the big thing for me is I had to turn to God and go, okay, I need help. I don't know how to do this. And that in some ways has created this bigger sense of me having an awareness that, you know, God has a best for us. And it's okay to follow God's best, even if it looks different to what is acceptable and what is, what's the word I would say? I'm trying to think of, I suppose, if it looks a little bit different, our paths as people are different, and God has specific purposes for all of us. And I know what I have learned on my journey is I have learned to see how compassionate God is. I have learned to see how kind God is. I have learned to see how generous God is. These are aspects of his character that I maybe would have known to talk about. Now I feel it because I have lived it and I know it. And as I said, when I look back, I have an evidence pathway that I was not on my own in this. And I look at the grace of all of the different doors that God has opened up, that I just think, wow, who knew I needed that? And actually God knew I needed it. I didn't.
Yeah,
and
but
that was given me.
But what you did is you asked. It's a dialogue, whether it's a spirit or whether it's a friend. In your case, it was God. He was there all along, and it's beautiful that you say you knew the answer. But I guess he did put the power on you to say, you know what, here I am. But you need to address it, right? You need to become proactive and ask me, and then this is how I interpret it, that you know what, I'm willing to guide you and give you answers, but you need to ask me. This awareness is beautiful. You know,
I wouldn't have seen the amount of goodness that was afforded to me if I hadn't been looking for it. And then looking for it, you ask for it. And for me, receiving was really hard. Give me a crisis and I'll sort it out any day of the week. Those muscles are very strong. Give me a need that I have and I need to try and figure out how to get it met. That's a whole other ballgame. And that sense of, you know, being able to receive that, the humbleness that comes with that, and the feelings of, I don't want to be in a position of receiving. That's not, because I was so used to being independent. But I know that for me to be a better version of me, some of those walls had to come down. And I didn't know how to take them down. And so what I see is this gentle pathway to go from where I was to where I am now, where those walls have come down. And not only can I receive, but I know how to give in a different way because I have been on the other end. I think when you're not on the other side of that coin, you do things in a way that you don't realize. There is a different experience you can have when you learn to receive. It changes who you are. And it has made me softer and it has made me stronger at the same time. And I wouldn't trade this version of me for anything in the whole world.
So here you are, you're one of us. And I think we're very grateful that we met you. This was a beautiful insight into your story.
Yeah, I just have one question for you, Claire. For those of the people that are listening to this video of yours, I mean, it's such a powerful story. But for those that may not be in a position where they have that relationship with God, What would be your one piece of advice for them? Because that's been a powerful motivator in your story. But
yes, it has. Yeah. And I think, you know, I mean, God shows up in the world in whatever way we interpret things. And so often how God showed up for me was through friends and through strangers with kindness that I didn't know. So it's not just about my faith, it's about who is in my world. And I think the answer to your question would be, don't be afraid to show who you really are to someone, because showing who you really are to someone opens a door to let goodness and kindness and compassion in that we don't afford to ourselves, because I have a degree in that one. But I would never be here if I hadn't learned how to open up to one person. For me, my starting point was opening up to God on walks on the beach of, this isn't working. What am I going to do? And just figuring out stuff. But then it had to be to a person. And then, of course, God uses people, and he uses books, and he uses podcasts, and he uses all sorts of stuff. So it doesn't have to be that you have a faith in God. It has to be that you have to be able to talk to someone to open a door. And opening the door is the important thing. It doesn't matter to who or to how, but that will allow a different energy to flow in. And it is very scary, and it is very emotional, but it leads to a good place. And it leads to a better place than you are where you are now if you feel closed in, because closed in doesn't allow you to breathe, expand, or grow.
Thank you. Okay.
So that's my story for what it's worth.
Brilliant. We see you with the next colleague of ours on the next episode. That would be our friend Jackie. Looking forward to hearing your story, Jackie.
Okay, thank you.
Soon. Bye.
See you soon, ladies.
Bye.